to episode 23 of Talent Hub TV. We're here with Olga Rankin from Simplest. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So we've spoken about getting you on the show for a while, so I'm glad we're finally here and excited to run through everything employee experience today.
Oh, it's excellent. It's my favourite topic, so very good.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to learning all about it.
Okay.
So can you tell us a bit about what you've done in your career before landing in this ecosystem?
Okay, so I started my career as a technology recruiter in the late 90s.
You were one of us.
I am, and I loved it. And I did that for a really long time, both here and in the UK. And then I moved into internal recruitment roles, and that evolved into the role that I've got today, which is Employee Experience Director.
Sure. Okay, cool. So that title obviously doesn't exist in all companies, Employee Experience Director. So what does that entail? What do you do day to day?
I guess what we look at from an employee experience perspective is when that experience starts, and that experience starts very much at the beginning before someone starts working with you.
Sure.
It's about ensuring people know what your company is and what it stands for, and making sure that that is actually a real thing and not just lip service.
Sure.
And then it's throughout the life cycle of that employee, all the way through when they finish with us. So we have and I maintain a lot of relationships with people who have left with us. And the reason for that is a lot of people leave for different reasons. It's not because they don't want to work for us. Maybe we can't give them what they need at that time.
Sure.
But a lot of people come back to us. Our boomerang rate is very significant.
Really?
And that's really exciting to have people go out, test the market and say, oh, you know what? Actually, I want to go back. I really liked it there.
Sure. So if companies out there are looking to improve their way, the experience of their employees, what can someone like you do for a company like that?
I think my role predominantly focuses on reminding the corporation part of the company, the sales department, ops, finance, that our customer are the people who work for us. And most companies talk about making sure the customer has a great experience. Well, my customer is every single employee. So my job is to focus and remind the decision makers, hey, we need to look after this customer too. We need to remember that they are our customer, and how can we delight them? I know that's like something every company says. How do we delight the customer? How do we delight our employees? How do we make them want to get up and come in and give us their best 40 hours a week? How do we do that?
Yeah,
and that's what my job is. It's to focus on that, to remind the company of that, and to listen to the employees to make the workplace a better place.
Sure. So that obviously does start throughout, like it's not just when the person starts, and also throughout, but it's ongoing. But if we look at the onboarding of staff and like what for you is important, is it just getting the right skills into a business, or skills secondary to attitude and culture fit?
I firmly believe that when organisations have very clear value set, and at Simplest we have a very, very clear value set. We have the critical thinker, the underdog, and stewardship. So we know what our values are, we know what they stand for, we understand when we see them displayed in our business, and we shout about them and give kudos and shout outs about them all the time. When we look for an employee to come in, we interview specifically trying to find examples in that employee's past where they've demonstrated those values.
Sure.
Because for me, skills are half of the journey. We hire a whole person. We don't just hire someone to sit in the corner and do something. They need to have everything else. It needs to be really well-rounded.
Sure.
And it's I reckon I have rejected technically brilliant people based on the fact that they do not fit the value set.
Really?
And that's what some people call that culture, but I call it values.
Yeah, because I've said in the past and on previous podcasts that I tell people, and I'm not just referring to Simplest here, but I will, when I'm speaking to a candidate about a role, I'll say it's a great culture, but then I've actually realised a great culture means different things to different people.
It really, really does. And I think a culture is what naturally evolves when it's inside there, but it sits on what the values of the organisation and the driving factors are. We base a lot of what we do off, from a management perspective, off a book called The Advantage. And that book is about clarity in values, clarity in messaging, and clarity in direction. And I think we talk about that from the very beginning in the interview process. So people know what they're getting and they're getting what they're buying.
Sure.
They're buying into whatever, myself or Anida who works for me, they're buying into what we tell them the organisation is.
Mm-hmm.
But we like to tell the truth because
Sure.
otherwise you're not going to be able to retain people.
Yeah.
You're just not going to be able to keep them.
Yeah, most definitely. And we've spoken in the past about how you make every employee feel like they've got a voice. And I believe you sit down with them and run through like an action plan or a strategy plan with each individual.
We absolutely do. So we work with the V2 Mum methodology, and we do that from the very top down. My boss, Reid, gets his V2 Mum from his boss, Ryan and Isaac, who are the owners of Simplus, or the CEO and CEO of Simplus. And then we work all the way down. But what that is not just getting the company what it needs, but getting the individual what they need. So really planning out what they want to achieve in the 6-month period of time. We do it twice a year, and how they're going to achieve it. It's not a performance review. It's planning for the future. It's not looking backwards. It's actually a really powerful tool to help people set their goals and then to be reminding them of those goals, because every time they sit down with their manager, they revisit that document, and it's a living document.
Sure.
But everybody has that action plan, and that's part of retaining people, showing them their way forward.
Yeah, agreed.
Because people talk about career paths a lot. And career paths, lots of people think it's got to be a trajectory going up. And I don't actually believe that in technology. For me, I know so many technology professionals who are absolute guns at what they do, but they're SMEs. They want to just go really deep in one area. They're not interested in the job title.
Sure.
They're not interested in being, a director one day. They just want to be the most awesome person at what they do.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's what they want to be famous for,
sure.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So retention starts for me as soon as someone signs an employment contract.
Yeah.
And like one big frustration I have with the ecosystem we work in, and it goes for every company, not just Salesforce hiring, but every company out there struggles with the onboarding process. It's so often that I find a candidate will sign a contract and then not hear from the company until the Friday before they start on the Monday, telling them what time to be at work. How do you manage that onboarding process to ensure that people are having a good experience from the moment they sign?
So I am really fortunate that I work with an absolutely outstanding internal recruiter called Anu. And Anuda, she has a very careful process. So it involves a lot of steps. And we actually just totally randomly were documenting this yesterday. Make sure that we're up to date with everything. And it really starts with making sure that the candidate knows what's going to happen on day one, because no one likes surprises. I personally love day one to be on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And I love Wednesdays as day one because pretty much who wants to work a full week in their first week? Okay. So we want to start the candidate experience being really positive by giving them a short week in their first week.
Sure.
Giving them the opportunity to get their feet under the desk before they start with a customer, and that's normally on the Monday, right? Most projects start on a Monday. So that onboarding involves ensuring everybody knows what they need to do before they get into the office. So sending them all their documentation for finance and for emergency contacts and for their profile. Everything is updated. We encourage them to write introductions and to get their LinkedIn ready to go before they even come on board.
Yep.
And then we get really prepared. So we get really prepared to make sure their systems are right, their laptop is right, that they've got a welcome pack when they arrive. And you don't need to be giving people, the most amazing welcome pack, but you need to be giving them a T-shirt or a drink bottle and giving them their computer that's all set up, not like you would just forgot that they were going to turn up. You need to be prepared.
Sure.
We arrange a lunch for them on their first day, and we try to invite as many people as possible to that lunch where it's feasible, so that they feel like everyone was excited for them to be there and that they're really welcomed and that they belong. Because part of retention is creating a culture of belonging and a community within your workplace.
Sure.
And when you've got that, people want to be there.
Yeah, sure.
They don't have to be there. It's not a job. It's more than a job. And I'm really proud that in my career I've managed to build environments like that twice, and it's it's something really special, I think, when you work at a company where you feel like that. And it's where you actually make real, you don't have to be friends with everyone you work with, but you can make real connections with people.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Another question around making people feel like they belong. How do you do that in a consulting organisation where they're out on a client site?
Well, it's interesting because I have arguments about this all the time. We're a professional services consultancy. Our customers want our consultants to be on customer site with them, and I want our consultants to be back with us every single Friday, which isn't always possible.
Sure.
And the reason I want people to be back in the office is that I want them to understand that this is where they belong. I don't want them to get Stockholm syndrome on some company site or think that we've just put them out to some consultant site and we don't care about them, because that's simply not true. So we use communication tools a lot. So we use Slack, and we have a lot of Slack channels to communicate with the wider team.
Yeah.
We have a team meeting that's a town hall meeting once a month, normally followed by something social. And we try to do events where we're doing cultural events that include the wider group. But I think the most important thing is really communicating with the wider team, communicating with the project leads, making sure that I spend a lot of time educating our sales AEs about the fact that they need to go down and visit people on site. And it's not just about selling the next deal. It's about making sure that the consultants working on site are happy, because happy consultants will deliver much better solutions and a greater customer, like external customer outcome, than people who feel like they are just a bum on a seat. And I don't want anyone who works in a company that I work in to ever feel like that.
So employee experience isn't just your responsibility, it's kind of the responsibility of everyone across the business to ensure that other people are having a good experience.
100%. And it really falls back on our value of stewardship. And I actually interpret our value of stewardship with a Greek word which is called philotimon. Philotimon means it brings me shame not to help you when I can. So that extends to noticing that someone's not feeling great and calling out to myself and say, hey, look, I noticed my colleague, they're not themselves, there's something wrong. It involves making a safe environment for our team to be able to help each other or ask questions, even like the really dumb questions maybe they've asked 50 times before, without feeling like someone's judging them on that. You know, it's about ensuring that the team know that that is a value that we hold and we expect them to uphold.
Sure.
And you're right, it's everybody. It's everybody. It's across the whole thing, because I'm just one person, right? So I can't make employee experience for everyone. I can't talk to everyone every single day.
Yeah, sure.
But I can encourage everybody to talk to each other every single day.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have been through an acquisition, and I guess like there's a lot of unknown through acquisition. So how do you retain staff through an acquisition?
Sure.
But also how do you not related to the acquisition, but the next point will be how do you kind of manage that culture through change and maybe difficult times?
Well, I guess I'm going to do the first point first, because when you go into an acquisition, I think the most important thing is to write a really clear change plan, and that change plan has to have a really clear communication plan. Out of all the employee service I've ever been involved in, people want transparency and communication. They don't want surprises in what's going to happen. So when we talk about that, the two acquisitions I've been involved in, I learned a lot of lessons from the first acquisition.
Yeah.
I was acquired into a much larger organisation, so I worked with merger and acquisition team on other acquisitions post that. So I did a lot of learning. One of the things I've learned is telling people nothing will change and everything will be the same is not a comforting statement.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
I think we should tell people, hey, you know what? Things are going to change. It is going to be different. But the thing that's made the last acquisition that I've been involved in, which was Simplis acquiring SquarePeg, was that Simplis and SquarePeg had very similar values. So that didn't change.
Sure.
What we were able to do was to express to the team and give them as much information as we could, as transparent as possible, We also let them have their say. So we had a lot of sessions where I just held open forums and said, all right, tell me what's bothering you. What are you worried about? What do you want to know? And just let employees say, I want to know this and I want to know that, without CEOs and managing directors being in the room.
Sure.
And the reason that was really important is that sometimes employees don't want to say, I'm really worried about my job. That's what people want to know when they're getting acquired. Am I going to have a job? For us, with the Simplus and SquarePeg acquisition, it was really easy because Simplus was in another country, so there wasn't the double up of jobs.
Yeah.
But when it's a side-by-side acquisition, it's a real concern,
sure,
especially for shared services.
Yeah.
So am I going to have a job? Answering that question really honestly is important. Making people feel like they're not going to be scared, because that's what people really feel when they're being acquired.
Yeah, for sure.
When I found out I was in a company that was being acquired the first time, the first thing I was worried about was how am I gonna keep living the lifestyle I'm living if I don't have a job? So that's what we spent a lot of time doing, making sure people feel comfortable and making sure that communication is ongoing. It's all well and good to say, hey, we're being acquired, here's a whole bunch of information, but it has to be really regular. One of the acquisitions I've been involved in, there was lots of gaps in communication. It would have been so much more comforting and a better employee experience if even the leaders of that company had said, we've got nothing to tell you, everything's status quo.
Sure.
That would have been better than just nothing, because when people don't know what's going on, they make stuff up.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it makes it more interesting.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess you've answered a lot of the second question there, because change, it's all about communication, right? So.
Well, we're really fortunate now at Simplus. We have got a change and advisory team. So whenever we're doing internal changes, even if there's small policy changes, I now go and I work with our change director, and I say to her, okay, this is the change I want to make. This is the approach I'm planning on taking. Am I missing anything? So we take change very seriously, and we take that right out into the field with our customers.
Sure. And we've already spoken about the people that leave, because there's always going to be retention. Like people will leave.
Absolutely.
That's definitely going to happen. So how do you manage offboarders, and how do you make sure they do have a good experience? And the reason I ask this is because so many people don't do this well.
Yeah.
Like they won't announce it to the team that someone's leaving. Just one day they're gone. So yeah, I think it's an issue that a lot of people haven't really addressed.
Look, I think we're getting better at it. Are we perfect? By no means are we perfect. We are improving all the time. Sometimes managers will say, I don't want you to tell the team that they're leaving because it will unsettle everybody else. And I understand that. But it really depends why a person's leaving. So if someone is leaving, we had a couple of people leave recently, which I was absolutely devastated about, because they were fantastic team members and great friends. But both of them left to go travelling. There's no need to keep something like that a secret. We should be celebrating what that person did. I am very, very conscious of telling people when they resign, no one remembers anything more than the last 4 weeks. Make the last 4 weeks as good as your first 4 weeks. Approach it with that level of enthusiasm, because that is going to be your legacy, right? And that's really hard for people to do, but it's really, really important for them to do.
Sure.
So we've gotten a lot better at telling our team that people are leaving. We generally don't tell them like on the day the resignations come in, because normally we want to understand why the resignation's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're getting a lot better at it. We do a proper offboarding, and we try to celebrate a person's time with us, and we try to explain to the team. So recently we sent out our newsletter for this month, and we talked about the people who had left and why they were leaving. And a couple of people left to go to partners. We don't hide behind our finger. People are going to do that. But generally they leave to go to a GSI if they're going to go to a partner. They don't generally want to leave and go to another like-for-like partner.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've been in the ecosystem for a while now. What would you change about the Salesforce space? Not the product, but the market that we're in.
I was always a Microsoft person. and I was not really interested in any other technology, and I did that for a long time. I love Salesforce technology because it is so new. So for me, that's really exciting because my whole world before was recruiting men into jobs that they had done and just walked up the ladder. Salesforce ecosystem is amazing because of the amount of diversity in it.
Yeah.
And the fact that people can switch careers and learn Salesforce and progress at a relatively rapid rate. One of the things I think is the hardest thing about our ecosystem is that it's growing at such a rapid rate, which means there isn't enough people in the system. And as partners, we are doing ourselves disservice by inflating salaries because we're competing with each other all the time because
Sure.
we need that staff, we need that team member, and it's not Simplus or any of the other partners; it's everybody.
Yeah.
I think that we as an ecosystem need to be mindful about making the ecosystem competitive, but not like insane.
Sure. And obviously salary is always going up because of the challenges that you just mentioned. If someone is working, because this is something I've posted about today actually, like you don't have to move company to get a pay rise if you actually deserve the pay rise. So like if you can go to your employer and explain why a pay rise is fair and reasonable, then most likely you'll get it if it's feasible.
Absolutely. Well, yes and no. Okay.
We're going to agree to disagree.
I'm going to agree to disagree. So we use, as I said, we use the V2 month. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to have a pay rise, sometimes, and we also band our roles for salary, sometimes I'll look at them and I will look at what they have achieved against their goals, where I think the gaps are for them getting that pay rise, and then we talk about it so we can make it happen. We just might not be able to make it happen right away.
Sure.
Because there could be a gap. I talk to a lot of people about, well, if you're going to another company and they're going to pay you X thousands of dollars more, what do you think you're going to need to be doing for that role? Because it's not always about not getting paid enough. It's if you get paid too much, the expectation is different as well,
Sky high,
right?
yeah.
So I think what we need to look at when people are looking for a salary, you don't need to change companies to get a salary increase. What you need to do is you need to have an honest discussion with your manager, and I think that discussion should start with, I would like a salary increase, and the reason I would like it is X, Y, and Z, and be really, really prepared for your meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Show where you have gone above and beyond. I don't believe people deserve salary increases for doing their job.
Sure.
That's what the company pays you to do.
Sure.
You deserve a salary increase when you have gone over and above, where you have consistently displayed for a relatively long period, say 3, 4, 5 months maybe, a level that you're working above the level that you're getting paid graded at. And I think that it's important that people take responsibility for that.
Yeah, agreed.
The other thing that I think is important is, what do you do if they say, no, I'm not giving you a pay rise? Sorry, I think that that's your job. Then if you want the pay rise, that's when you have a conversation that says, okay, what do I need to do to get a pay rise? And help me understand where my gaps are, how I can improve on those, and how I can get that. Because so often people go, oh, I didn't get the pay rise, so I quit and when I went somewhere else.
Sure.
Well, you didn't get the pay rise because that organisation didn't think that you were up to what you wanted to get paid. If you want to progress your career, you need to take a bit of responsibility for it.
Yeah, agreed.
And progressing a career is not just about money. That's part of it.
Sure.
It's about skill. It's about doing the hard yards, and it's about having corporate maturity. You might be really technically skilled, but you don't know how to talk to a CEO or a CIO or talk to stakeholders or handle difficult situations. All those soft skills are just as valuable as any technical skill or certification.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that that's one of the challenges we have in the Salesforce ecosystem. People get certified up to the hilt, but their soft skills are not at the same level as their technical skills.
Sure.
And they need to, I believe, we really need to work on that. And that's something that our organisation, through our learning and development department this year, is really focusing on.
Sure.
Really building the soft skills of our consultants, really looking at that skill set. Because when we talked before about technical skills and cultural fit or value fit for an organisation. In professional services, there's a third part of that, and that's consulting skills. Can you be a consultant? Can you go on customer side? Do you know how to influence, negotiate, look for new opportunities? All those skills are things that people need to learn.
Sure. Final question. If a company out there is watching this and thinking, right, I need to really focus on the experience that my employees are having, what's the first step to understanding how people are actually feeling and how that can be improved?
I would say get somebody who is not in a senior management position to have an all-hands open forum meeting and ask the employees what they want. Now, some things that employees tell me that they want are totally unfeasible for an organisation of our size. We're not Google, we're not Salesforce. We can't do everything that everybody wants.
A chef in the office, right?
Chef in the office, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't do chef-prepared meals. But we listen to what our employees want and we try to make changes to help with that. So examples of that for us, we included 5 days holiday leave that you can borrow. So it's instead of buying leave, you can just borrow 5 days, up to 5 days leave a year, so that people could take longer holidays if they wanted to. Because people were saying, we want to buy leave. Our accountants said, oh, look, that's really challenging for us to manage, but we can do it like this. Mm-hmm. So that's what we brought in. It's about the employees asking for things, you trying to work to what they want, and sometimes you can do it, but sometimes you've got to meet in the middle.
Sure, okay.
And it's about employees, you being honest about what you can provide. Mm-hmm. Not every organisation can provide everything, and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. That was really value-packed. I think there was a lot in there that people can really gain and learn from, so really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. And if people want to connect with you and ask you any questions, where's the best place to do that?
The best place is always LinkedIn. I'm Olga Rankin on LinkedIn. You can find me and connect with me. If it's about recruitment, I can point you in the right direction. Or
to me.
I can point you to Bano here. But yeah, it's fantastic to be here. I'm so pleased I was able to do this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.